It's a Seattle Kraken game day, and here's what the Kraken need to do in order for me to wear the Uma hat on tomorrow's episode.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey to the hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans, and happy game day. All of that rhymed, not on purpose. Either way, I hope you are doing well. I am in Florida. It actually is sunny out. It wasn't when I got started earlier today, but the sun is out. It's a game day for the Seattle Kraken. They're going to wrap up this road trip. And as I said on yesterday's episode, I do think it's possible for the Seattle Kraken to get some points out of today. In fact, I'm manifesting it. I am calling it into the universe. The Seattle Kraken are going to get some points. It would be great if they get an outright win. I do think they can scrap, at least at minimum, get this game to overtime. And the last time these two teams played, that's exactly what we saw. Before we get into all of that, I want to let you know, though, that today's episode of Locked On Kraken is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, the Seattle Kraken are in a really interesting place as an organization, as a hockey team. There is a lot that we don't know. What we do know is that it's an inconsistent team. What we also know is that there are a lot of elements on this team that can propel this team to more success. And that's a part of why we did we really spent some time showing you or allowing you to hear from Ron Francis and then breaking it down. And I did like the comments that I saw on YouTube. A lot of people frustrated, and rightfully so, understandably so, with the Seattle Kraken team. And although I do think it was the right thing to do to get maybe not ahead of, I think, the news was already out there, but to kind of nip a lot of the rumors in the bud, I do think that was the right thing to do. But I agree with some of the comments that we got on YouTube that, what else was Ron Francis supposed to say? We got a lot of comments like that. Reclaiming the narrative, someone said is a little bit of PR speak. And I agree. It was more like, it was good to talk about it, but what was actually said? And I alluded to that. I think that he was as forthcoming as he could be, but that there's always more going on. And that's not necessarily what Ron Francis is going to offer. But I do think that, and he alluded to the fact that he knows there are a lot of things. Ron Francis knows that there's a lot of things that need to improve with this Seattle Kraken team. He definitely didn't lay out the blueprint to what it will look like to make those changes. But I think for me, especially in hindsight, and I talked about this on a podcast a day or two ago when I talked about Daniel Sprong. And actually, I talk about it all of the time. And I'm going to refer to an article that I meant to mention the other day, and I completely forgot. This team got a little bit, it's not really lucky, but the timing of the Eberle injury, Vince Dunn being out, Daniel Sprong coming, collecting a few wins on that road stretch, all of those things made for an interesting time where it feels like at some point in time, the front office was like, well, let's do just a little bit, but we don't know that we want to start selling up. That sounds really terrible. We don't know that we want to start moving players or trading players. And I don't know if you want to call it indecision. Maybe it's a little bit cautious, being more cautious and conservative. But we've played this game before. We've really played this game before with the Seattle Kraken. And I liked a comment that we got on YouTube. The second year put this organization in a bad spot. I think they believed a lot of stuff that wasn't really true and did things that really hurt the team. I mean, there were so many players that were key players within their right that were making moves for the Seattle Kraken. Daniel Sprong at the time, one of them. We didn't retain those players, but we never really got back to any identity, and certainly not sandpaper. We need more sandpaper. And this team, I think, of all of the iterations of Seattle Kraken hockey that we've seen, is the least willing, perhaps, because I don't think it's that they're not able. We've seen Oliver Bjorkstrand, tussle it up. We know Yanni Gourde is hurt right now, but he can do that. Vince Dunn, Riker Evans, Ty Cartier. These are guys that can play with sandpaper. But as a collective, this is not a sandpaper team. This is not a lunch pail team. And that's a little bit of a problem, especially a problem when you're going up against the Winnipeg Jets. And this is a team where we're going to see a very good goaltender in Connor Hellebuck. And you got to be willing to muck it up. It has to be ugly. You have to get shots on net, even if you just are banking it off the glass, rebounds, retool, reset in the offensive end. And that takes a tenacity that we don't always see from the Seattle Kraken team. And so the article that I'm referring to is why new coach Dan Bylsma is simply a piece of the Kraken puzzle. This is from May 28th of last year. And, I broke this down when the article came out. The correct coach is an undeniably important piece, but the Kraken require more pieces to solve the puzzle. There are a lot of things that this Kraken team still needs, and I don't know that they exist right now in our ecosystem, or at least not on the NHL roster. But one thing that this team has to muster up, especially if they hope to get any points, let alone an outright win tonight, is they have to muster up some sandpaper, some PNV. If you're an OG, or if you know what that stands for. I feel like I'm going to stop saying it. I get very aggressive and very New York when I say what the PNV is. Ryan Donato gifted me that saying, and I've never let go of it because I think it's amazing. We need to muck it up. The guy who does that best, consistently, I should say, is Jaden Schwartz. I think another guy I'd like to see get to the net front, especially on the power play, Shane Wright. And I think that this Seattle Kraken team is going to have to really emphasize that. And quite honestly, they have been. I talked to Jared McCann when I was in Seattle, and he made mention of that has been a point of emphasis, but we need more. We absolutely need more. But, here's what Jaden Schwartz had to say about going up against Hellebuck, the Jets, and being a little bit more aggressive.
Just looking at this Jets team and all of the things that they do well, obviously their goaltender are a challenge. What has to be the mindset to try to drive up that volume today?
Yeah, I mean, they got a good, deep team. They've been good for a long time. Skilled players. They play a good team system, so you really got to work for your chances. Nothing really comes easy. You got to it's like a working man's game tonight around the net, on the forecheck, and play a pressure-up game and just be aggressive. And, we know their goalies. Everyone knows their goalies play them well. So with that, you just got to get, traffic like every other goalie and make sure you're getting around the net and, make them work.
When it comes to executing, how do you get bodies there? Like, what has to happen, especially as somebody who is a master at getting there?
I think it's just getting to the O zone for one. I think we got to be clean through the neutral zone, make sure we're being good with the puck, and then just support each other. Having a guy in the middle of the ice, making sure we're not on the outside, make sure we're getting the inside, and when our D-men have looks, make sure they're shooting instead of passing up shots. And a lot of it's just being aggressive and spinning off the D, and they like to box out, so you got to find ways to get around them.
Jaden offered so much in that clip It's going to be a working men's game, something, his version of lunch pail. But he also talked about the defense and how critical it's going to be for the Seattle Kraken to be able to work through their defense. And I think that's really great insight. That's why he's one of the leaders on the team. You heard Piper Shaw tee him up to talk about getting gritty in front of the net, because he does that really well. He does that efficiently. He does that effectively. He does it consistently for the Seattle Kraken. And they're going to need that. They're going to need that as they go up against this Winnipeg Jets team. Well, I talked a little bit about sandpaper. I did give you some quotes from Jaden Schwartz in that. Now let's talk about some notes coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Indeed. And again, I've told you before, I'm a small business owner, and sometimes you realize that you need to hire somebody like yesterday. But how can you find amazing candidates fast? Well, it's really easy. You use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page to help reach the right candidates faster. And now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit on Indeed. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Now, terms and conditions do apply, but hey, if you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica Ayala here. I'm here for a very innovative women's sports league that's starting up, but you can follow me on Black Rosie Media if you want to know more about that. I also like that the ribbon that they gave us almost matches Kraken blue. It's not Winnipeg Jets blue, so we'll take it. But taking on the Winnipeg Jets, I showed this on yesterday's episode, but this is a solid team. They're coming in 6-2-2 in their last 10 games. Their home record 17-4-13. The away record for the Kraken 10-13-0. Finally got to that 10-win mark. Affirmed it for the Seattle Kraken. But this is a strong team through and through. The last time we played the Winnipeg Jets, though, a huge part of what was making this team successful was that Matty Beniers had a 2-goal game. Now, this was way back when Jordan Eberle was still healthy and on the ice. Ron Francis did give some updates on Eberle, which was good to hear. But the Seattle Kraken, they had 32 shots in that game. They were able to, really get some looks in front of the net. And that's what needs to continue to happen. This game did go into overtime where the Winnipeg Jets were able to take it. Now, when it comes to tonight, again, Connor Hellebuck is going to be a focal point. He's got a 1.99 goals against average. His save percentage is .929 coming into the game. He's got 6 shutouts, overall record of 27-6-2. Imagining we're going to see Joey Decourt again. He is 14-9-2, a 2.47 goals against average, but a .914 save percentage. When we look at some of the other stats here, the faceoffs about even, but we're in the high 49% mark, but favor the Winnipeg Jets at 49.9%, which has them 20th overall in the league, whereas the Seattle Kraken are at 48.5, and that immediately drops them to 25%. Now, the goals for the Seattle Kraken, 2.91 goals per game, goals against 3.20. Only 2.42 goals against for second in the league. And you heard it in that clip from Jaden Schwartz. A part of that is because, what game was it? Oh, Edmonton, right? Like Edmonton, the Winnipeg Jets are very good at making sure they push their opponents out to the perimeter. So finding seams is going to be huge. And the way that you do that as a hockey team or any sport where there's movement is just that you have to move without the puck. There has to be a lot of movement. You have to have sharp passing. I've seen the Kraken have some really terrible passing. I think it was that Devils game, particularly the one, not the one in New Jersey, the one in Seattle that I was at. And it just looked like, the Kraken didn't want to be there. So it has to tighten up. It has to tighten up. And this is a team, again, on paper, they have all of the skill set to be able to do that. The execution is what is failing this team right now. The execution is why the Seattle Kraken are having trouble really cracking through, so to speak, no pun intended. But speaking of the Seattle Kraken cracking through, let's talk about where they actually stand in the division, the Central Division. The Seattle Kraken, in the Pacific Division, they are seventh. There's a lot of work to do. Everyone but San Jose ahead of the Seattle Kraken. We're technically tied in points with the Anaheim Ducks. Have a better goal differential than they do, but they have a better win percentage. So the Seattle Kraken, again, need to get points. Talk about it all of the time. The Seattle Kraken, not a great team when trailing after 2 periods. We did just get a win the other day, so now it's 3-22-2. But here's the ticket. The Winnipeg Jets are 22-0-1 when they are leading after 2 periods. This is going to be, again, big man's lunch pail. You really have to go out and get this win. That's why I talked about sandpaper or P&V at the top of the show. There is no excuse, not just because you're playing Winnipeg. So I want to take that out of the equation just for a moment. You are, as I just said in the standings, 7th in the Pacific Division. If we look at the wild card in the Western Conference, the Seattle Kraken 7th overall behind Anaheim, Utah, St. Louis, Vancouver, Calgary, and the Colorado Avalanche. Right now, the top 3 teams in the Pacific Division in this order: Vegas Golden Knights, Edmonton Oilers, and the LA Kings. There's so much work that has to be done. You can take no days, no shifts off. The mentality has been faltering. It has been the Achilles heel for this team this season. And this is a chance against a very disciplined, in a lot of ways, Winnipeg Jets team to prove. I need the Kraken to go into this game to prove to themselves that they can get gritty, that they can muck it up, that last win in Pittsburgh was not an anomaly, and that they will do and can do and are committed to doing whatever it takes to win hockey games, or in this case, to get points. We've already played an overtime game against these Winnipeg Jets, so I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility to see the Kraken get over the hump. Yes, get at least a point, but not just get at least 1 point, get 2. We're expecting and we're going to need exemplary goaltending. I loved what Jaden Schwartz said also about having the D-men be able to help, aid, and facilitate in the transition game. This team has said they want to play fast. In order to do that, sometimes fast is not just how you skate, it's how you move the puck. And I do think that overall we have some pretty responsible puck moving defensemen. Are they elite level? Not necessarily. But I also think that some of what is stymieing the Seattle Kraken is just that we're making so many errors, lapses of judgment, missed, blown assignments, mostly in the neutral zone, but throughout all 3 zones, that we cannot break out. We cannot find a way to, release the Kraken, release Kraken skaters into open space, tape-to-tape pass, execute a good shot. Now, of course, that's what you want. You always want that. That is the ideal dream for the Seattle Kraken team, run and gun babes. That being said, the reality is that it takes hard work along the boards. It takes hard work winning the 50-50 puck battles. I talked about the puck battles stat from Tuesday's game. Terrible. That's terrible. That's an effort thing. That's something you can control. And the Kraken have to do that. I think they can. I think this is a team, again, they can do it. It's just a matter of, which version of the Seattle Kraken is going to show up. And that, again, is just the frustrating part because, it's definitely possible. So as we close today's episode, let's talk about some keys to the game, but specifically key players, key matchups that we want to see against Winnipeg. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, if you are an everydayer or an OGer, that I love going to live events. Sports, music, theater, comedy, doesn't matter. One of my favorite memories Ooh. And the reason I love live events, again, sports, music, comedy, theater, is because the live element of performance on the court, on the stage, is unmatched. And there's energy, there's excitement, and it becomes just this unforgettable moment that hopefully you have with some friends, whether you make them at the event or you bring them along. Now, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with a new feature called Game Time Picks. Whew. I'm tired. This is a feature that filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, that's just head to Game Time, create an account, and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL. It's LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time app today. What time is it? It's game time. And it's almost game time for the Seattle Kraken. And so, as Dan Bilesma once said, you need some gamers. You need some gamers. And two gamers, and the way I interpret what Dan Bilesma meant is just guys that attack. Go get the game. Go get the puck. We'll do what it takes. They've got the juice. Two of those guys were recently put on a D pairing together, and that is Riker Evans and Brandon Montour. Piper Shaw asked Dan Bilesma about that pairing in Pittsburgh, what worked well, and I loved that to answer Piper's question about especially Garth or Riker Evans, what he did well is he said the energy, especially the anger that the Pittsburgh players directed towards Riker Evans for him was a sign that Riker was doing the right stuff, playing heavy, hard on, the puck, getting into the body, stick to stick. And I love that answer. I freaking love that answer. I also think that with Riker Evans and Brandon Montour, you are guaranteed that anytime your defenseman touches the puck, they're going to be able to skate with it. They're going to be able to absorb any physical contact. And most importantly, to what we've already talked about on the show, they can move the puck. They are skilled at that, whether it's on their stick or they're connecting with someone else. Excuse me. And of course, both can score. So having those two together to help jumpstart the offense while also not having you quote unquote lose anything defensively. And I don't mean just from a defenseman perspective, because I do think having two guys on the ice together like Evans and Montour can clean up some of the mistakes that happen throughout all three zones. Maybe they're even less likely to happen. I love that. So that's one of my keys to the game. Let's keep that D pairing rolling. They are exactly the kind of players. They're the gamers. Them, Jaden Schwartz, they're the gamers that we need. The second key, and it goes back to Matty Beniers. Dan Bylsma talked specifically about kind of having Matty playing in a position where, he can be an option for Riker Evans, Brandon Montour, or anyone to try to use him as a target and just get some shots tipped in towards the net. He wants to see Matty Beniers in that role a little bit more. The Seattle Kraken need goals like that. That's what makes Jaden Schwartz so good. Alex Wenberg was really good at that. So we need Matty Beniers to find his gamer level, because I think he's a gamer as well. His game has taken some turns. And a part of that, Dan Bylsma said, is because he just started getting matchups where he was seeing the best from other teams. And I think a part of that is true. When you're young and you're getting a lot of that attention, you have to find almost like your Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant called it the Mamba mentality. I don't know what Michael Jordan called it, but I keep thinking of The Last Dance, where this guy, one of the takeaways, which was a little bit frightening, but also impressive and hilarious, is that Michael Jordan would almost make up narratives and storylines in his head to get juiced up for the occasion. And I took that personally, right? Matty Beniers is such a cool, calm, and collected guy, at least outwardly. I can't speak to, kind of what he's thinking, what's going through his head, obviously. He doesn't share that. Seems to be like, things roll off his shoulder. And that's fine. I respect that. And every once in a while, sometimes you need to fabricate some fire under someone's tush. And I think it's time to figure out what buttons need to be pressed to get Matty Beniers to his Optimus Prime, right, level, to his best, most gritty, aggressive, whatever it takes game. How do we light the fire under Matty Beniers? I do think that comes from him getting scoring chances. So I need Matty to shoot. We need to set him up to shoot, set him up to tip things in front of the net. But it sounds like that's going to be another focus. I don't think the Seattle Kraken are a defensively sound team. I don't think they have a defensively sound mentality, but they have to have some hunger and fight. And that can clean up a lot of things. If you think about the basics of defense, your job is to stop someone from doing something. It's really that simple. It's really that simple. So go do that. 50-50 pucks, board battles. Excuse me. Again, I'm covering a basketball league, and it's a 3-on-3 full court league. It's a modified court. But the players talk about that the thing that they need to do to adjust from going 5-on-5 with a regulation court to 3-on-3 in a truncated court is bust through screens. They have to bust through screens. You cannot be passive. You have to be active when it comes to defending. All that space, all that time. And the reason I mention that is because play every second like it's open ice. And if you let your mark, your opposition get by you, that it's an immediate goal. Like today, again, players are like, hey, if you blow a defensive assignment, that's probably a layup or a bunny, as we say in basketball. Take that mentality and infuse it into the Seattle Kraken. If I don't win this puck, the other team scores. Just every time. Don't assume someone is going to save you. If I mess up, it's over. Sometimes you have to have that desperation. I don't see enough of it from the Seattle Kraken team often enough. So take your responsibility seriously. And with that comes, if you don't have a player to mark, support your goaltender. That has to happen. It has to happen. And it's not happening enough for the Seattle Kraken. So, we got the dynamic duo of Montour and Evans activating Matty Beniers and just going to do whatever it takes, getting aggressive, winning the puck battles. 80% in favor of the opposition in a win? That's insane. It was more than 80%. I don't have the stats in front of me now. We talked about it on yesterday's show. That's unacceptable, period. The fact that was the data breakdown and you won is somewhat miraculous, but it cannot happen against this Winnipeg Jets team. But as I said, I've already claimed it. I've affirmed it. The Seattle Kraken are getting at least a point. And if they do those three things I just mentioned, they might get 2 points. And that would be pretty nice, coming back to Climate Pledge Arena, having the home crowd in their favor to just start chipping away at this deficit. All the skills there. It's the will that's been missing, the will and the consistency. And consistency, like Dan said on yesterday's episode, like Dan said in the clip that I played on yesterday's episode, playing a complete game is not about being perfect or consistent for 60 whole minutes. That's literally perfection. The aim isn't perfection. The aim is reliability, accountability, consistency. The aim is to win more battles than you lose. Just like the goal of the game is to score more than your opponent. I mean, these things sound super simple, but sometimes you got to break it down. So that's the name of the game for the Seattle Kraken. Game is 8 p.m. Eastern time, so my time, at least as of right now. The Kraken taking on, sorry to keep clearing my throat, I have a little tickle. The Kraken take on the Winnipeg Jets tonight before heading back home. Need to get some points. Who is your pick for player to watch? Or, let me know in the comments. Who do you think has to have a big game for the Seattle Kraken? Let's take Joey Daccord off the table because I think we all know Joey has to have a good game. Who else do you think needs to have a big game for the Seattle Kraken? Let me know in the comments on YouTube. Be kind to yourselves. Be kind to each other. Hold fast. Stay true. And let's go Kraken. It's a game day, baby. Enjoy the game. I'll catch you on the next episode of Locked On Kraken. Peace out.